I always thought if my marriage ended, it would be with shouting, maybe shattered plates. A door slammed so hard the frame cracked. But not this. Not a four-line text while she was supposed to be away at a corporate training retreat in Denver. This marriage is over. I'm in love with someone else. I've moved the money. The house is yours. I don't want anything from you. Just like that, no call, no face-to-face conversation. Not even the courtesy of a slow fade. 4 lines to erase 12 years. I stared at my phone, not moving, while the steam from my coffee thinned into nothing. My name's Carson Webb. I'm 41 years old, Senior Vice President of Strategy at Valiant Tech Systems. I've been there 15 years, started in business development, worked my way up from the basement floor to the corner office. Built my life like a blueprint, every line straight, every decision measured, and apparently, none of that counted when it came to the woman I married. The text landed at 7:16 a.m. I just sat down in my home office, still in gym clothes, thinking about back-to-back calls and how I might squeeze in a grocery run. And then, boom. My marriage detonated like a backdoor algorithm. No warning, just gone. I didn't respond right away. My thumb hovered over the keyboard for longer than I'll admit. Then, almost like muscle memory, I tapped into our bank apps. I don't even know what I expected to see. Maybe nothing had gone through yet. Maybe she was bluffing. Maybe I'd catch it in time. Nope. Every joint account, emptied. The transfers had cleared hours before she sent the message. One to an account I didn't recognize. Another to what looked like a brokerage firm. The emergency fund, closed. Even the petty little household card we use for dry cleaning, gone. She left me the house, sure, but stripped it of all liquidity like a car thief yanking the engine and leaving the shell. I dialed her. It rang once, then straight to voicemail. I called again. Blocked. For a moment, I just sat there staring at my reflection in the dark screen of my laptop. You ever have a moment so surreal that your body reacts before your brain can? My palms were sweating, but my arms were cold. My jaw clenched like I'd been punched. I opened the window. Cold spring air rushed in. I needed the bite of it to remember I was still here, still breathing. Then I read the message again. The house is yours. That part made me laugh. Not a real laugh. The kind that bubbles up when your mind short-circuits. Like she was doing me a favor. Like she was being generous. That house wasn't a gift. It was a decoy. A way to look fair if things went public. I stood up, walked to the kitchen, and poured out my coffee. It had gone cold. 12 years. We had dinner parties in that house. We painted the guest room together. She planted herbs on the windowsill that I was allergic to, and I let it slide because it made her happy. Now she couldn't even call me to say goodbye. My phone buzzed again. A Wells Fargo security alert. She was still trying to pull from the travel card tied to my name. That's when the emotion stopped. The fog cleared. Everything inside me shifted from disbelief to something colder, cleaner. I didn't rage. I didn't break anything. I didn't fall to the floor and sob. I just walked back to my desk, sat down, and typed a simple reply. Good luck. That was it. No paragraphs, no closure, no bargaining. If she wanted out, she had it. She burned the bridge. I didn't need to dig through the ashes, but I would remember the direction she ran. I closed the text thread, then opened a blank spreadsheet. I wasn't going to cry today. I was going to calculate. In less than 15 minutes, I was pulling up statements, rerouting email access, updating passwords, flagging anything I'd co-signed. I called my financial advisor and told him we needed to meet. I didn't explain. He just said, name the time. I took another look around the office. Everything in it was the result of the last 2 decades of my life. Discipline, strategy, patience. She thought she took the liquidity, but she didn't take me. I'm not just numbers on a screen. I built her comfort. I can build again. I leaned back in my chair, ran a hand over my face, and looked out the window. The sun had come up, sharp and bright. For a second, I closed my eyes and inhaled. I whispered, let's see who needs luck. The silence was different now. It wasn't just quiet. It was stripped. The kind of quiet that hums in your chest because there's nothing left for sound to bounce off. No soft footsteps from the hallway. No hum of her toothbrush. No drawer creaks. Just absence. It had been 2 days since the text. 2 days since my wife walked out of our marriage and siphoned off every cent we'd earned together. I didn't hear from her again. No follow-up. No explanation. She disappeared with surgical precision. But I stayed in the house, the one she left me, like some grand act of mercy. I started taking inventory, not of the furniture or the clothes she left behind, but of the damage. Our health insurance policy? Canceled. My access to it revoked. I didn't even know you could do that without both signatures. Turns out, she'd already filed a request to remove me as a dependent 2 weeks earlier. The letter confirming it arrived the same morning. She vanished. The savings account I set up for us to start a family someday? Gone. The account didn't even exist anymore. Closed. Dispersed. She didn't just drain our finances. She nuked them from orbit. The woman I'd built a life with was now the ghost of a thief, and she was good at it. Scarily good. Then I opened the drawer in our shared filing cabinet marked Business. That one really hit. We'd started a consulting brand together, Web and Hunter Solutions. She was Hunter, I was Web. We'd split the roles. She handled marketing. I built the systems. It was just starting to get real traction. Our logo was on a vinyl banner in the garage. I found it rolled up, ripped at the corner, like she couldn't be bothered to dispose of it properly. The papers were still there. Contracts, invoices, branding drafts. But when I checked our shared email inbox, she'd deleted everything. The drive was wiped clean. Only spam remained. She'd even submitted a dissolution form to the state business registry. Without my knowledge. That was illegal. But she bet on me being too stunned to notice. She bet wrong. That evening, I remembered something. An LLC I created 5 years ago during a freelance stretch when I was between roles. Web Analytics, registered in my name only. I kept it alive in case I ever wanted to go solo again. I'd forgotten about it until that moment. I pulled up the Secretary of State's website and logged in. Active, still in good standing. With that, I had a shell, one she couldn't touch. I called the bank and opened a business checking account under the LLC. I moved what little remained, my personal emergency fund she hadn't found. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Then I called Mason, a friend from college who now specialized in forensic accounting. I didn't mince words. I laid it all out, clean and clinical. She stole everything. I want to know where it went. He didn't hesitate. Send me what you got. I'll start tonight. That was the first time since the message that I felt the fog begin to lift. Not all at once. Grief doesn't work like that. But something in me clicked. I wasn't powerless. I wasn't frozen. I was still Carson Webb. 41, Vice President of Strategy, builder of things. I'd just forgotten that when she kicked the foundation out from under me. That night, I wandered the house like a man walking through his own museum. Every room felt like a crime scene. The master bathroom still smelled like her perfume. A scarf hung on the back of a dining chair. In the living room, a half-empty candle flickered as if mocking the idea that anything here was whole. I stood in the kitchen for a long time, staring at the whiteboard on the fridge where we used to write weekly goals. Her handwriting was still there, curved and precise. Finish Q2 deck, plan date night, buy basil. I stared at those words until they blurred. The woman who wrote them had already planned her exit, and still, she bought basil. But the tears didn't come, only anger, not the wild, smashing kind, the cold kind, the kind that charts, calculates, plans. I wasn't after revenge. I didn't want to destroy her life. That would be too easy, and frankly beneath me. I wanted something simpler, more precise. I wanted equilibrium. I wanted everything back in balance, not just the money, the truth, the record, the legacy. If she wanted to burn the version of me she knew, then fine. I'd rise from the ashes. But she was going to watch. Back in my office, I dropped into my desk chair and opened the bottom drawer. Way in the back, behind old tax returns and expired warranties, was a thin gray folder I hadn't looked at in years. Across the front, prenup, do not destroy in her handwriting. I almost smiled. I set it on the desk, flipped on the lamp, and opened it slowly. Let's see what you missed. The world moves differently when you stop reacting and start orchestrating. That was the shift. I didn't cry, I didn't chase. I built a team. First up was Mason, my forensic accountant. He looked over the statements I'd compiled like a man reading sheet music, quiet, focused, occasionally nodding to himself. We met in his downtown office, books stacked haphazardly around us like he'd never left school. After an hour, he swiveled his monitor toward me. She was sloppy. I raised an eyebrow. Sloppy? She emptied our accounts. She hid 3 more, he said, tapping the screen. One under her maiden name, one linked to a shell nonprofit in Oregon, and this one, he zoomed in, opened in the Bahamas. That's the one she's been moving funds into for 6 months. 6 months. That was the same time she started talking about corporate retreats and finding herself professionally. I'd believed her, even helped her pick the damn luggage. Mason emailed me a full report that night, timelines, routing numbers, email trails. Then I called Dana. Dana Becker was my lawyer for the purchase of our first house. Sharp, unflinching, and meticulous in a way that scared even realtors. She remembered me. Carson, she said after I filled her in, you still have the original prenup? I do, I said, marked do not destroy. She actually laughed. Good, because I remember it too. And I remember adding a clause you insisted on. Malicious abandonment. It's not standard, but you were paranoid back then. Not paranoid, just precise. I like things documented, traced, agreed upon. What does that mean now? It means if we prove fraud and infidelity, she forfeits claim to any shared assets, including retroactive profits from the business, and under this clause, we can file for immediate injunctions on remaining funds. How soon? I'll have papers drafted by Friday. I didn't even nod. I just said, add a privacy waiver. I want the option to make it public. Are you looking to humiliate her? No, I said coldly. Just leverage. She can pick her exit, quiet or loud. Next was hiring a private investigator, not just any PI. I called in a referral from a corporate contact, someone used to tracking executives who take shortcuts. The guy's name was Jerome. He wore quiet shoes, carried no notepad, and asked better questions than most interviewers. When I mentioned the training retreat in Denver, he just said, send me the itinerary she gave you. I'll do the rest. He didn't check in again until he had something solid. 2 weeks later, he handed me a file. She wasn't alone in Denver, he said, sliding it across the table. She flew there to meet a man she'd connected with at a networking conference 2 months earlier. They stayed in an Airbnb registered to his assistant, paid in cash. I flipped through the photos. There they were, her and the man, walking arm in arm through the airport, checking into a spa, laughing over wine, and then one final shot of them entering a rental unit late at night. Jerome wasn't done. The man's married. His wife still lives in Seattle. Want me to find her? Yes, I said without hesitation, and add her to the file. I walked out of that meeting colder than I've ever felt, and more centered than I'd been in years. By the following Tuesday, Dana had finalized the filing. We served her papers at the apartment she was now sharing with her new love. Jerome made sure the man's wife was copied on the delivery, with a full dossier attached, and her name redacted until she asked for the uncensored version. I didn't message my wife. I didn't call. I didn't gloat or lash out or tell mutual friends. I didn't need to. I filed and I waited. 2 days later, Dana and I sat on a bench outside the county courthouse. The sun was sharp overhead, and she was reviewing paperwork one final time. She's not going to take this well, Dana said. She already didn't. She glanced over the top of her sunglasses. You sure you want to push this far? I'm not pushing, I said, calm and precise. I'm applying weight where the structure's already cracking. She flipped the folder closed. This is going to be very public, unless she wants it to go away quietly. I smiled then, genuinely. It was the first one in weeks that didn't feel hollow. She always did hate attention. The elevator ride to the 23rd floor was silent, except for the hum of tension riding along my spine. Dana stood beside me, flipping through her notes like we were walking into a business negotiation. To her, that's exactly what it was. But to me, this was something else entirely. This was a reckoning. The mediation room was glass-walled, perched high above the city. Neutral gray carpet, water pitchers on the table, and an oversized clock that ticked louder than it needed to. She was already there when I walked in, wearing beige, like she'd tried to soften herself, as if dressing like regret might change the outcome. She looked up when I entered, her eyes widened just slightly, not fear exactly. More like she didn't recognize me. Maybe she expected fury or tears. But I was calm, cold even. That was what rattled her. "Hi, Carson," she said, voice smaller than I remembered. I didn't respond. I just sat down, placed my folder on the table, and gave Dana a small nod. The mediator entered a few moments later, a soft-spoken woman with tired eyes who looked like she'd seen 1,000 of these before. I didn't envy her job. We began. Dana led with the prenup clause, malicious abandonment, the evidence folder, the financial trail, the affidavit from the PI, the receipts from the joint account withdrawals. Every item laid out with surgical clarity. My ex didn't interrupt. She just kept her hands folded in her lap, staring at the table like it might open up and swallow her. When the mediator asked if she had anything to add, she shook her head, then finally whispered, "I didn't mean for it to go this far." Dana didn't blink. "It went exactly as far as you took it." Then came the business filings. I opened my folder and slid over the LLC documents. "You tried to dissolve Web Analytics under false authority," I said, not raising my voice. "But it never stopped existing. You just didn't know what it still held." The mediator skimmed the papers, eyes scanning the signatures. "You rebranded the LLC?" I nodded. "Filed the paperwork 2 weeks ago. New name, new structure. Everything under it remains mine, by legal right and by intellectual property. She had no claim to begin with." The best part? The brand she tried to erase was now being rebuilt. I'd onboarded 3 new clients in the past 10 days alone, not out of spite, just momentum. The mediator then moved to financial clawbacks. The judge had granted a preliminary injunction pending full trial. Her accounts were frozen, not wiped, just paused, held for review. But, from the look on her face, you'd think the world had ended. Her new partner, whoever he was, had vanished. Jerome's last update said the man cut off contact the moment his wife received the dossier. No more love notes, no more spa weekends, no more secret apartments, just silence. She shifted in her chair. "Carson," she finally said, her voice cracking, "I don't want a public trial. I don't want this dragged out. I just want peace." I studied her face. She meant it. But not in the way she thought. She wanted peace from consequences, from exposure, from the version of herself that people were now starting to see. "You made that decision the moment you pressed send," I said. "You could have left with honesty, but you chose theft. You chose lies. You chose spectacle." She blinked fast. "I didn't know it would—" "You didn't care," I cut in, calm, controlled. "And now you do. That's not my responsibility." Dana leaned in. "We're prepared to offer a settlement, 0 claim to assets, full business rights to Mr. Webb, and confidentiality clause with a penalty if violated. In exchange, we drop pursuit of criminal charges related to the fraudulent account closures." The mediator nodded. "That's standard in these cases." She hesitated, looked down at her lap, then slowly, finally, nodded. "Okay." It was over, just like that. We stood. She tried to meet my eyes, but I didn't give her the satisfaction. I'd mourned already. The man who walked into this room wasn't the one who'd been betrayed. He was the one who'd survived it. As we exited, Dana touched my shoulder. "You handled that well." "I handled it," I said. "That's all I needed to do." I paused just before stepping into the elevator. She was still in the room, shoulders slumped, eyes blank. I watched her for a second, just long enough for the truth to land. "You said you didn't want anything from me," I said over my shoulder. "Wish granted." The morning light hit the floor in long, quiet stripes. It was the kind of light that doesn't ask for attention. It just settles in and makes everything look clean. My new apartment sat 22 floors above the noise. No creaking floorboards, no lingering perfume. Just soft jazz in the background, the faint hiss of my coffee machine, and the steady hum of stillness. Peace didn't arrive loudly. It showed up when the chaos left. 6 months had passed, not quickly, not painlessly, but with purpose. The house she so graciously left me became a rental within 30 days. I didn't renovate it for nostalgia. I flipped it like a project. Neutral paint, new fixtures, and a tenant who paid on time. That first deposit hit my new business account like a quiet fist bump from the universe. That property became seed money, fuel for the next version of myself. Web Analytics wasn't just alive, it was thriving. I rebranded, tightened the offerings, and went solo full-time. Operational strategy consulting for mid-size firms. No fluff, no chasing approval, just clean systems, strong results, and my name on every deliverable, the same name she tried to erase. I dropped 15 pounds without trying. No more stress snacking, no late-night negotiations over dinner. I slept better, I thought sharper, I moved differently. Like a man who didn't need to explain himself anymore. The scars didn't disappear, but they stopped itching. And through all of it, I never posted a single thing. No cryptic status updates, no vague wisdom quotes. I didn't need an audience for my rebuild, I just built. She, on the other hand, vanished for a while. After the mediation, her social media accounts went dark. No more curated brunch photos or half-hearted motivational captions. Then, last week, she resurfaced. I didn't go looking. A friend sent me a screenshot without comment. The caption read, "Sometimes we leave not because we want to hurt anyone, but because we're drowning in emotional coercion. Healing means reclaiming yourself." I didn't even get angry. I just laughed, once, quiet and full-bodied. The kind of laugh that doesn't come from mockery, but from understanding. That post wasn't for me. It wasn't even for her followers. It was for herself. A story she needed to tell to live with what she'd done. I didn't reply. I didn't share it. I just muted the thread and went back to work. Today I had one final thing to do. The last form from the settlement. A release of mutual claim. Not required, but offered. Symbolic more than anything else. My attorney mailed it over with a sticky note. Sign and file. Then you're officially free. I sipped my coffee, letting the steam rise, and reached into the drawer for a pen. Not just any pen. The Mont Blanc she gave me 3 birthdays ago. She'd had it engraved with my initials and a quote from Marcus Aurelius. "The impediment to action advances action." Funny how that turned out. I clicked the pen open, smoothed the paper, and signed my name with a steady hand. The ink glided across the page like it had been waiting for this moment. I set it down, leaned back in my chair, and let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding for 6 months. It was done. All of it. No spousal support, no alimony. She'd even paid a portion of my legal fees after the court reviewed the financial misconduct. The prenup held, the truth held. And I held my ground without ever needing to raise my voice. The apartment was quiet again, not empty, just intentional. The kind of quiet you earn. Outside, the city moved like it always had. Traffic threading between buildings, lives unfolding 1,000 feet below. But up here, everything felt still, clear. I took my coffee to the window and let the heat warm my fingers. I didn't need revenge, I didn't need applause. I needed this, a clean surface, a horizon that didn't include her. She left me with the house, I left her with the truth. One's worth more than the other.